Welcome back to the channel. After a while of absence, I'm back and I'm bringing to you a very simple project where we integrate Django, Django Rest Framework, and Streamlit. So we are going to create an API as well as this basic analytics app where we are going to learn the very basics of Streamlit to create such solution. So first of all, we are going to cover how to add title, how to add, you can say, a subtitle. Then we will learn about the layout customization. We have over here two columns. In column 1, we have some content, have an expander, and in column 2, we see a matplotlib chart. Then we will cover the session state where we can do some incrementation, and we will learn how to fetch the data and display them in Streamlit as JSON. So we are fetching the data from the Swappy API and displaying this data in our app. Next, we will fetch the data from our API and present it as a data frame, as well as we will visualize the favorite number and age in a scatter plot. Then we will have a form to add a new user. So over here, let's add a new user, test user 4. It's going to be a female. And the favorite number is going to be, let's say, 17. Let's submit. And as you can see, the test user 4 has been created. So 28 and 17 is the dot representing this particular user. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, so the plan for this video is to start with Django. We are going to build a very easy project with one application, which is going to be the customer's application. We will create a very simple customer's model, and based on this model, we will build a simple API using, of course, Django Rest Framework. Once we have this, we will proceed to Streamlit, and over there, we will start learning the very basics, and then we will be able to integrate Streamlit with Django and Django Rest Framework. So we will be able to fetch data from the API as well as to send data to our Django backend. All right, so in order to get started, let's head over to the desktop. As you can see, I'm already here, and at the desktop, I'm going to create a new folder called Analytics App. Okay, and here is our Analytics App. So let's go inside of this directory and let's create a virtual environment, which I'm going to name NV. So right now we have this NV, and let's go inside to activate it. Okay, and then I'm going to go outside and I'm going to install Django. So now that the Django is installed, we can write Django admin start project, and I'm going to call the project core, but then I'm going to rename core to backend. And right now we should see backend. All right. So I'm going to go inside of backend, and right now we have our core main project folder as well as the manage py file. And with the use of manage py file, I'm going to create the database. Okay, so here we have created the tables for the database. And if I list out the elements, we should see the DB SQLite 3 database. Perfect. And now, since we have the tables for the database, we can actually create a super user so we can log into the Django administration. So again, we will use the manage py file to do this. Python manage py create super user, and then I'm going to leave it to blank. So this is going to be my username. I'm going to skip the email address. I'm going to provide the password and retype it. And now we have a confirmation that the super user has been successfully created. So we can run the development server using Python manage py run server. So here we see a confirmation that Django has been successfully installed, and we can head over to this particular address with the /admin at the end to log in to Django administration. And there we go. All right. Next, I'm going to press Ctrl+C to stop the development server, and I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. Now let's go back and let's create our application. So Python manage py start app, and we will create a customers application. So as you can see right now, we have this customers app, and we should include it in the settings py file. So we need to go to the installed apps list, and over here, let's add customers. Also, let's also install Django Rest Framework. So pip install Django Rest Framework, and we can include Rest Framework in the installed apps list as well. All right, as the next step, let's head over to the customers models py file where we will build our customer class. So a class in the models py file is like a table, and then we will define the fields, which are going to be the columns, and the objects that we are going to store in this table are going to be the rows. All right, so yeah, let's write class customer, which inherits from models.model, and let's define our fields, and to be more precise, let's define our columns. So I want to have a name column, and this is going to be a models char field, and I'm going to set the max length to maybe 200 or maybe 100. And then I will have the gender, and this is also going to be a models char field. And here I want to provide some choices, which I'm going to define in the choices py file. Okay, so I'm going to write gender choices, and this is going to be equal to a tuple, and inside I'm going to add 2 additional tuples. Okay, I'm going to write 0, and this is going to be the value stored in the database for female. So this is going to be the human readable name, and then we will have 1 for male. Okay, so let's save this. Let's go back to the models py file, and let's import those gender choices. So from .choices, we want to import gender choices, and let's write choices is equal to gender choices. And the max length in our case is going to be 1 because it's going to be either 0 or 1, right? Perfect. So as the next step, let's add age, and this is going to be positive small integer field, and we will also want to know what is the favorite number, and this is going to be a models positive small integer field as well. Then we will have created over here. This is going to be a date time field with auto now add is equal to true. So we will have this created value whenever the object gets created, and it's going to be added automatically. So let's write a string representation method, and let's return an f string. I'm going to return the self name and then the ID. Okay. So let's save the models py file. Before we actually see this customers app in our Django administration, we need to register this class in the admin py file and then run the migrations. So let's bring in from.models the customer class, and then we can write admin site register and customer. We also need to go back to the terminal and run the migration. So first Python manage py make migrations, then Python manage py migrate, and Python manage py run server. So now if we open up the DB SQLite, we will see customers customer, and this is the table that we have created. So we have the ID, name, gender, age, favorite number, and created columns. So if we now refresh the page, we can add test customer. Let's say it's going to be a male, age 20, favorite number 20. Let's save it. And this is our first object, which should appear over here in this DB SQLite viewer as well. Okay, perfect. As the next step, let's create the API directory. And inside, let's bring in the serializer's py file, the views py file, and also the URL's py file. And we will begin from the serializers. So over here, we are going to build a serializer for our customer class that will convert our Django models into a format that is suitable for the API. So right now, let's start from importing serializers from Rest Framework. From Rest Framework, I want to import serializers, and from models, we want to import the customer model. All right, so now we are going to create a serializer based off this customer model. So let's write class customer serializer, which inherits from serializers.model serializer. Okay, so the first step is going to indicate with the use of class meta that we are referring to the customer model, and then we need to define the fields, which we will set in a tuple, and I'm going to place in ID, name, gender, and then the age, and the favorite number, and let's also add created, why not? Okay, so our customer serializer in a very basic version is ready. However, this is not exactly what we want to achieve. We will come back and optimize this a little bit later. As the next step, let's create a view. So we will do this using view sets. So I'm going to import from Rest Framework view sets. And I'm also going to bring in the serializer. So from .serializer, I want to import the customer serializer, and from .models, I want to bring in the customer. Now let's define a class which I'm going to name customer viewSet, and this will inherit from viewsets.model viewSet. And I'm going to define the query set, which is going to be equal customer objects all. And the serializer class is going to be set to the customer serializer. So with this very simple view set, with this very basic implementation of this customer view set, we can handle in a very easy way all the CRUD operations. And this is not all. View sets are much more powerful, and I'm going to cover them in a Django Rest Framework 101 class, and it's going to be published for free on this channel. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so to not miss this video. Now we need to head over to the URLs, and we need to add our view set to a router. We need to register our view set in a router. So from REST framework, I want to import routers, or we can go like this. From REST framework routers, let's bring in the default router. And from .views, we want to import the customer view set. Now let's set the customer router to be equal default router. And then we can write customer router register. And the path is going to be customers, like this, customers. And we will assign to this path the customer view set. All right, so now let's save this, and also let's save the views.py file. I didn't do it. Okay, and then as the next step, let's head over to core, and here let's create an API directory as well. And let's add a URLs.py file. And this is going to be the main registry for our API. So if we would have additional applications in our project, we would bring the routers to this particular place and then simply register them. And how to do this? Well, it's very similar to the things that we've done in the customer's application. So let me show you how to do this. From REST framework, we want to import, or again, from REST framework routers, we want to import the default router. And from Django URLs, we will import path as well as include. And from customers API URLs, we want to import the router that we have created, and I named it customer router. So now we can set the main router, which is going to be equal default router. And here we can have many apps like app 1, app 2. For example, the app 2 can be products. App 1 can be, I don't know, some notes or some notifications, whatever. And then we have our customers app, and we can write router, registry, and then extend. And we want to pass in our customer router registry like this. And now we can open up the URL patterns, and let's write path. And as the main path, we are going to include the router URLs. And that's basically it, but we still need to include the URLs.py from over here in the main URLs.py file for the entire Django project. So again, over here, let's import include. Let's define a new path API, and let's write include. Let's head over to the core API and URLs. So let's save this, and then let's copy this, and let's go to API, and here is our customers view set, you can say. So we can go inside, and we have one object. And now the problem is that we see the value for the gender, which is stored in the database, not the human readable name. And we also maybe would like to make the created date a little bit prettier. So this is what we are going to do next. So let's go back to customers, serializers.py, and we will start maybe from the created, because created is going to be a little bit easier. This is going to be a serializer method field. And if we do it like this, if we are setting created as serializer method field, we are obliged to provide a method inside of this customer class, but outside of the class meta, which is called get, and then whatever the field name is. So in our case, it's going to be created. And this takes in self and obj. Self refers to the class and obj refers to the object. So we will be working with this obj, not self. Very important. Okay, now we can return obj created, and we will write scrf time to format the time. So we will have it in a little bit prettier way. So it's going to be here, and then we will have the month as well as the day. And then you can add a comma or not, and we will take care of the time. So hours, and then minutes and seconds. Like this. Okay, so I'm going to save the serializer's py file. Let's see what is going to be the result. And right now, this looks much better. Okay, so let's now tackle the gender. So for this, we are going to create a separate serializer, and this is going to be called gender choice field serializer, which inherits from serializer's field. All right, so over here, I'm going to set two methods. To representation, and this takes in self obj as well. For now, I'm going to write pass. And then to internal value, which takes in self and data. And for now, I'm going to write pass. So with the to representation, we are basically converting the internal value, you can say, to the display text. And then in this particular method, we are returning the input data as it is. So here we can, in our case, just return data. And then over here, we need to bring in the choices, the gender choices. So from .choices, we want to import gender choices, okay? And we can return the gender choices by converting the gender choices to a dictionary. And then here we just need to pass in the obj. So if we go to our customer serializer and set gender to be equal the gender choice field serializer, now everything should be working. So I'm going to reload the page. And as you can see right now, we see male, okay? As the next step, let's actually add a new terminal window. And this terminal window is going to be for our Streamlit app. So I'm going to head over, first of all, I'm going to deactivate Conda. And Conda deactivate, I think this is the command for this. There we go. And then I'm going to head over to the desktop. And we are going to access the Analytics app. Over here, I'm going to create an app py file next to the backend and the NV. But I'm going to access the NV first, or after creating the app py, in order to activate the virtual environment so that we can install Streamlit. Pip install Streamlit. Okay, let's wait a few seconds. This is the official Streamlit site, so you can explore it on your own. And now, since I have it installed, I'm just going to maybe close my Visual Studio Code. And then I'm going to open it up from the Analytics app level. So over here, I have my Django as well as the app py next to each other. All right. So let's open up this app py and let's see how easily we can create web apps with the use of Streamlit. So first of all, we need to import Streamlit, and we can do it as st to keep things a little bit shorter. And then let's begin by defining a title. And I'm just going to put in analytics dashboard. And then st right. This is going to be our, let's call it subtitle. And here I'm just going to place in the version. Okay, so let's save this and let's run our development server. So Streamlit run app UI. Streamlit like this. And there we go. So this is our very basic Streamlit app with just 2 lines of code, maybe 3 if we count the import. So this is very convenient if you want to create an app which is based on, for example, data science or machine learning, because with Streamlit you just don't need to care that much about the HTML, CSS, and so on. And we can easily implement things like charts, for example. So I'm going to show you how we can create a chart and display it in a Streamlit app right now. So this is just going to be our test chart. And for this, I need to import matplotlib. So let's do it right away. Import matplotlib. Okay, maybe I need to install it. So let's go and quit the server, pip install matplotlib. All right, so now that I've installed matplotlib, let's try this again. Import matplotlib by plot as plt. Okay, and then we can go to the test chart section. First, I'm going to define the categories of my bar chart. So I'm just going to write A, B, C, and D, nothing fancy. Then I'm going to create the values for each of the categories. So for this, I'm going to use NumPy. Import NumPy as NP. And over here, let's define the values. So NP random, and then random int. We want integers from 10 to, let's say, 100. And the size I'm going to set to 4 since we have 4 categories. All right, so next I'm going to pick and access from the plt subplots. And I'm going to create a bar chart, passing the categories, the values, and I'm going to set the color to maybe blue. As the next step, I'm going to set the X label. And on the X label, we will have the categories. And on the Y label, we are going to have the values. Okay. Also, let's set the title. Test chart, something like this, or first bar chart. Okay. And then we need to display the matplotlib figure in Streamlit. So for this, we can write st and then pyplot, and we just need to pass in the figure. So let's save this and let's refresh the page. And there we go. So here is our first bar chart with some values referring to some categories. As the next step, let's work on some layout customization. So I would like to have this particular chart in a column, and next to it, I would like to have something else, okay? So in order to do this, let's go to line number 7 in my case, and I'm going to write layout customization. Okay, and then I'm going to set col1, col2, because we want to have 2 columns, and this is going to be equal st columns, and we just need to pass in the amount. So right now I can write with col1, and here I can define what do I want in col1. So I'm going to write st header, and let's write column 1, and then I'm just going to copy this, paste it over here, and then with col2, this is going to be column 2. Let's save this, reload the page, and as you can see, we have column 1 and column 2. So what I'm going to do is to cut this test chart and paste it over here. Okay. So let's see how this will work. And there we go. So we have this chart right now placed in column number 2. And let's add something to column 1. So we need to go to this particular section. Let's write st right, and maybe over here, let's write some content. And let's add an expander. So with st expander, here we can provide the title for the expander. Click to choose something. We can simply add an option. Let's write option to choose. Let's save this, reload the page, and there we go. Column 1, some content, click to choose something, and option to choose. So we could add another option to choose. Okay. Next, let's work on the session state. So I'm going to add a comment, session state, and I'm going to start with a check. If counter not in st session state, then we are going to create this session state for the counter. So st session state counter is equal initially to 0. Next, we need to create a button, at least one button for incrementing, or maybe 2 buttons to increment and decrement. So let's start maybe with 1. I'm going to add a comment increment btn. So this is how we create a button. We just write if st and then button, and then we need to provide the label for the button. So in our case, it's going to be increment. Then what we are going to do is to simply increment the counter. So st session state counter plus equals 1. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and I'm going to refresh the page, and here's our increment button. However, we don't see the state on our web app. So to display the counter value, we can do it below with the use of st_right. So we learned about this already, but we will pass in an f string, and here I will write counter value, and I'm just going to inject the st session state counter. There we go. So let's save this, reload the page, and here is the counter value. now, okay, we have an error. Session state has no attribute counter. Okay, I missed an O over here. So let's try this one more time. Increment, and there we go. Ignore what's happening on the chart because we are reloading the page and each time new random data get generated. So just ignore this. Okay, perfect. Next, let's fetch data from the Swappy Star Wars API and display them in the Streamlit app. So in order to do this, I'm going to actually begin with the fetch data function. So I'm going to define this function maybe at the top. So let's write functions. We will have two over here for fetching the data and sending the data. So let's first write for fetching, fetch data, and this will take in an endpoint that we will need to provide. We will also need the request model, the Python request model, which I'm going to import right now. And yeah, we can now proceed. Response is going to be equal requests, and then get, we will pass in the endpoint, and then data is going to be equal response.json, and we simply need to return data. Okay, so over here we have our function, which we will be able to use somewhere over here. So I'm going to write another comment, data from Swappy API. All right, so I'm going to provide the Swappy endpoint, which is going to be equal HTTPS Swappy dev, and then Swappy dev API people, and we want to refer to the first object in the people. Okay, so as the next step, let's write Swappy data is going to be equal our fetch data, where we are passing now the Swappy endpoint. Okay, so we are now calling our fetch data function, and we are going to store the returned data in the Swappy data. The final step will be to display the data. So let's write stwrite, and here I'm just going to maybe put in data from the Swappy API, and with the use of stjson, we can simply display this Swappy data. So let's save this. Let's reload the page. And there we go. So here is the data coming from the Swappy API. Perfect. Next, let's fetch the data from our Django app. So for this, what we need to do is to maybe first of all add a new section as a comment, fetch data from our API, okay? And again, let's create a variable data, and this is going to be equal to fetch data. We need to provide the endpoint. I'm going to call it API URL, and then I'm just going to head over to the customers list, copy this, and paste it. So API URL is now going to be passed to the fetch data. And if we have the data, we will display a scatter plot. So for this, we are going to use a chart from Altair. Okay, so we need to import it, maybe somewhere above the requests. Import Altair as ALT, and we can go down. And also let's import pandas as PD. Okay, because we will need pandas to create a data frame. And I'm going to also show you how to display data in a data frame with the use of Streamlit. So if we have the data, we can write df is equal to pd data frame, and we can simply pass in the data. And to display the data frame, we just need to write st data frame. So it's very intuitive, and we just need to pass in the df. So let's save this, and let's see if this will work. So going back to our Streamlit app, here is our data frame. Perfect. Okay, so let's now create a scatter plot so we can actually visualize the data that we have in our data frame. So for this, let's write a scatter chart variable, and this is going to be equal alt chart. We will pass in the data, mark circle, and then we just need to encode like this. And the X is going to be the age. And then we will have the Y set as favorite number. Okay. Finally, we need to display the chart. So st alter chart, and we will pass in the scatter chart and use container width set to true. So let's save this and let's see how this will work. And we have some issue. Age encoding field is specified without a type. The type cannot be automatically interfered because the data is not specified as pandas data frame. So I think I might have to pass the df for this to work. I'm going to save this, reload the page, and there we go. Okay, so here is one of our data points. So the favorite number is 20 and the age is 20. All right. So what I want to do next is to create a form below this scatter plot so that we can actually also from Streamlit be able to add records. Okay. So for this, we need the form as well as the send data function, which we are going to create right now. So I'm going to head over to the top and I'm going to add a send data function. Let's say we will pass in the endpoint, but this is going to be specifically for our object creation, which is related to the customers. So I'm going to add an endpoint anyway, and then the name, gender, age, and the favorite number. Or let's just remove this endpoint. We will set it. We already have it set over here. This is the same thing. Okay, so this is the API URL. So we absolutely don't need it. All right. So as the next step, what we are going to do is to create a data object, data dictionary, where we will have the name set as the name. Then we will have the gender set as, actually not the gender, we need the gender value. So let's create a variable called gender value, and we will have 0 if gender is equal to female, else we will have 1. Okay, and then we will pass in the gender value, which can be either 0 or 1. All right, then we will have the age set to age, and the favorite favorite number is going to be set to favorite number. Okay, so now let's define a response variable, which is going to be set to requests post, and we will pass in the API URL. There we go. And I'm going to set the JSON set to data. Next, let's return the response. I'm going to bring the swappy endpoint at the top, as well as our API URL, which I'm also going to bring at the top. All right, so we can now, I think we can now proceed with the form. So I'm going to add it at the very bottom below the chart. So here we will have another section, form to collect customer data. So let's write name, st, text, input, and I'm going to give it a label of your name. All right, so let's save this. Let's reload the page. And here is our input for the name. So let's add another input for the gender. So this is going to be st radio this time, because we have two choices, male and female. So select your gender, and we can place in male as well as female. Okay. Next, let's provide the age, and this is going to be st slider, where we can select our age. So select your age, and then we will have the minimum value, we will have the maximum value, and the default value is going to be, I don't know, 18, let's say. So let's save this and let's see how this will look. And there we go. So as you can see, name, gender, and we have this nice slider to select our age. And I made a spelling mistake. It should be select your age. All right. So let's also add the favorite number. And this is going to be st number input. And here we will write enter your favorite number. And the step is going to be set to 1 because I want only the integers. So let's reload the page. And there we go. So now we need to submit the form. So we can write if st button submit, then we will have a response equal to send data, where we are going to pass in the API URL. Actually, no, because as mentioned before, we won't have this API URL. We already included it over here. This is, one more time, specific for the customers in this configuration. So we just need to pass in the name, gender, age, and the favorite number, which I'm going to copy because I'm a little bit worried about making a spelling mistake. All right, now we can check if response status code is equal to 201, then we can write st success and new customer data created. And in other case, we are going to display an error something went wrong. Okay, so let's check it out. So let's reload the page. And as you can see, we are now able to submit the form. Test user. Submit. And we have new customer data created. However, we don't see it over here because we need to refresh the page. And as you can see, right now we have two data objects. The first created in Django administration, and the second one created directly through this form. So what we can do in order to automatically refresh the page is maybe below the st success, let's write st rerun, and this should do the trick. So let's try it again. Test user 2. Let's do it something like this. Submit. And this time you didn't need to reload the page. Okay, so we have test customer, test user, and test user 2. Let's add a female maybe. Submit. And there we go. So this is working, and I think we can finish this project over here. I hope you guys liked it. And if you did, consider subscribing to the channel. More things to come pretty soon.